First off, just as way of context on why I'm presenting the key convergence today. So those that are familiar with the Marine Corps' history of networks, it's a little challenging sometimes and has been something that we have struggled to get our hands around on how we posture the Marine Corps to modernize effectively. So recounting back to 2017, I was the operations officer at the Marine Corps Cyberspace Operations Group, and I was a communications officer that liked to do my own things. I liked to do them when I wanted to do them, how I wanted to do them, to deploy them for my commander. And when I got to the Marine Corps Cyberspace Operations Group, I saw the other side of that problem. The other side of that problem is a network infrastructure that is fragmented across the entire landscape of the Marine Corps. You have tactical networks that exist generally everywhere. Perhaps their cybersecurity posture is uneven, unhomogeneous, probably not well defended. We have procedural control of our networks, not actual active control of our networks. And principally what we're using our enterprise networks for at that time is for our business operations. So when the Marine Corps bought back the MCSEN from NMCI, we bought back a network infrastructure that was principally oriented towards business networks. As we were modernizing, we were trying to figure out how we deploy those business networks to the tactical edge. And that was a term in 2017 and 18 called DMCSEN, Deployed Marine Corps Enterprise Networks. And that was a challenge to deploy those because the culture in the Marine Corps at the time as a communications officer was, again, let me do my own thing, how I want to do it, when I want to do it, for my commander. So it was very much fragmented. It continued to be fragmented. In 2019, for those that are familiar, we started getting after the problem about how we enable tactical commanders through enterprise offerings. And so we stood up the network battalions beginning in 2019. We established Marine Corps Enterprise Network Command and Control. So we moved from a procedural to an active command and control of our enterprise networks posture. And then we continued to modernize, and we started laying in investments in FY 21, 22, 23 to really modernize our networks to the state where they can provide a capability to our commanders that is relevant. No longer forcing a commander or compelling a commander to establish tactical domains or other resource sponsors across the enterprise to establish their own solution set for their individual problem, both in an information technology paradigm and an operational technology paradigm. So we've realized the benefits of a lot of those investments over the last 3 or 4 years, and now we're at a point of inflection for the Marine Corps. And that point of inflection is Marine Corps Enterprise Network unification sufficient? Is it sufficient to allow us to perform the actions for the service, not just individual commanders, that we need to in order to be successful in what we are forecasting is in front of us? And oftentimes you'll hear from seniors, perhaps the answer is no. Perhaps the answer is no because we have two principal problems that are in front of us. One of the problems that's in front of us is how do we posture the service to integrate into a global battle network that is really it is the rule now, it's no longer the exception. That global battle network is something that the Marine Corps, if it's going to be a useful force offering to the Joint Force, needs to say, plug me in. Here's our data, plug me in. And ultimately it comes down to data centricity and data orchestration. And you can't do that through a fragmented network architecture. The other problem that we're posturing for is we have an increasingly sophisticated cyberspace environment, and there are actors in that cyberspace environment that are looking at the Marine Corps as a potential vulnerability for the Joint Force, right? And if we're doing that, it costs an exorbitant amount of resources to not only operate those networks, but principally secure and defend those networks in a way that keeps pace with an adversary that is investing tons of resources in order to potentially find that soft underbelly. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So just bear with me as I work through a couple slides. So one of our problems that really comes to is how do we provide robust and assured command and control to the commanders and to ensure that the service provides that as an offering to the Joint Force. We're looking at that through several lenses: unity of command and effort, joint and coalition interoperability, and readiness. And I'm going to actually remove from those slideshows. Those are the incorrect slides. So I'm just going to speak extemporaneously if you'll bear with me. And hopefully, if I have questions along the way, I just ask you to lob them my way, and I'm happy to discuss those. So we talked about how we're posturing to enter into the Joint Force offering and allow us to conduct to enable data centricity and data orchestration to integrate into the Joint Force. How we provide the enterprise resources to secure and defend those networks. So as we look at the service response to that imperative, we are saying it again, it's assured C2 through not just an extend unification, but zooming out and looking at it more broadly as Marine Corps Cyberspace Environment Convergence. So just a real quick lesson on what that is for the under-indoctrinated or those that aren't wearing this cloth. The MCEN, again, is our business operations. The Marine Corps Cyberspace Environment encompasses our entire cyberspace landscape. That landscape traverses from individual networks that are at a battalion level. That includes our information technology and operational technology networks that are in our Marine Corps installations. That network extends to other networks such as global command and control systems, a FATIDS, which is one of our FIRES networks or our FIRES platforms. It really is pretty extensive, right? And we know that the adversary is concerned with all those, so we need to struggle with how do we effectively defend those. Again, McKee convergence is our answer. That McKee convergence needs to transcend from layer 1 all the way through the OSI model, which is something that's not well understood, right? Oftentimes there's solutions out there that people say we just need to completely segregate both of those. Information technology from operational technology. Well, that's probably a fool's errand, right? Because ultimately if you segment those, you're still going to create a vulnerable surface for the adversary. So the question then for us is, segmentation is probably the answer, but segmentation at what level, right? Appropriate segmentation is the right answer. So what is McKee convergence as we're saying that this is the answer for those imperatives? McKee convergence is the modernization of the Marine Corps cyberspace environment. I'm going to call it the McKee for the rest of my presentation, at the global, regional, local, and edge layers. So we're looking at it through multiple layers. Global being enterprise, regional being principally, if you're in the Marine Corps, it's your Camp Pendleton, it's your Camp Foster in Okinawa, and then it's your Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. And then it's also through your local and your edge layers. As we move forces forward from the line of departure, how do those forces leverage enterprise offerings, and how do we extend those to forces? So we're looking at through those 4 levels. We're looking at it through 3 lenses. One is unity of command and effort. So how do we enable commanders' unity, command, and effort? The Marine Corps is ultimately answering the call from the Secretary to be a more lethal force. We believe a more lethal force is able to apply unity of command and effort in the forward battle area. So how do we do that? How do we posture for joint and coalition interoperability? That is an increasing theme, and today at AFCEA, you see that our coalition partners are everywhere. Ms. Rathbun has talked extensively, and she talked yesterday about how do we enable that coalition interoperability. Ms. Beavers said the same. So how do we posture the service to do that? It's certainly not going at it alone. And then finally, how do we generate readiness? There are trade-off decisions that services need to make. We have to balance force modernization with appropriate levels of resourcing. We acknowledge that. Money is not a bottomless pit. So how do we generate readiness with limited resources? What's being more efficient with those resources? And that's ultimately what convergence is going after. Through convergence, we have 5 key design principles that I'll anchor on for a second. The first one, and I alluded to earlier, is appropriate segmentation at the data type and data layer level of our networks. It's not complete reproduction or duplication of those, it's segmentation is the answer. It's censoring throughout. So whether you're censoring at layer 2, layer 3, you apply those sensors appropriately and you extend those sensors. For a long time, the Marine Corps has struggled, and for those that know, the FMF tactical grid has been a challenge for us. We're on the cusp of collapsing the FMF tactical grid and programatizing it through something called the Marine Corps tactical grid. The Marine Corps tactical grid will reduce the commandant's risk surface programmatically for a ubiquitous agnostic transport capability. extend the sensoring environment and the sensoring capability of Marine Force Cyberspace's command over that entire tactical grid and allow us to sense and make sense of our cyberspace environment, something we have never been able to do. And we're also harnessing the ingenuity and the capability of amazing things that Marines have done in the operational forces. We have some very talented engineers in the Marine Corps that operate at our FMF and our MAGTAFs. And we're harnessing that innovation and that expertise and bring it into a program of record, which will be called the Marine Corps Tactical Grid. We're unifying at our NIPR and SIPR environments. Today, we are on the cusp of unifying our NIPR and SIPR environments. I expect that that will be done in short order. We're also working on unifying our SCI networks. So that's the next step. And I think we have good progress towards that, and I'll be able to update you next year on where we are on that. We also, in order to posture us to integrate with the Joint Force, we are creating, and one of our design principles is standard and defined interfaces that enable utilization of global infrastructure and integration into those joint and coalition networks that I described earlier. Our answer for the Marine Corps when someone says, I need a Marine Corps unit, here's my data, we will say, plug me in, let's orchestrate, because that's what we want to be able to do. We don't want to be a unique interface, we want to be predictable to the Joint Force so that when other joint capabilities are ready, we can tell them that we're ready and we know what our interfaces are to plug into them. We're deploying ubiquitous and agnostic transport. Today, we're in the process of deploying, which may not be crazy for anybody here if you're familiar with the Army, Air Force, or the way Navy does Black Corps, but we're finally modernizing the Marine Corps to a Black Corps transport. We have also laid in moving towards colorless transport. Because we've been able to tell the story within the service, we're ready to invest money to move to next-gen transport, colorless transport. And then finally, underlying all of these, because this is the future, is our design principle has to be based on single identity and zero trust principles. Ultimately, zero trust, if it just exists on the Marine Corps Enterprise Network, is not valuable. Zero trust has to be universal. Now, there are some challenges that are outside of the Marine Corps' purview, how we're tagging and labeling our data. It has to be a universal standard, our belief, but certainly we're going to be postured to enable that within the Marine Corps Enterprise Network. So as we look at the global layer of the Marine Corps Cyberspace Environment, the value proposition at the global layer is that the Marine Corps Cyberspace Environment is the global foundation to connectivity, enabling A, unity of command and effort, joint and coalition operability, and operational readiness. At the global layer, I've kind of described some of the things that I'm going to refer to, but really creating a defense in depth posture for the Marine Corps so we can leverage some of the very unique resources that are available outside of the service to sense and make sense of our cyberspace environment and defend it effectively. Integrating at the enterprise level into global and regional mission threats. And it's not just Indo-PACOM in our purview, it's other combatant commands that will call on Marine forces to be integrated with them should we go from crisis to conflict. Fully leveraging our cloud infrastructure. Our cloud infrastructure provides some unbelievable capabilities and capacity. Within the Marine Corps Cyberspace Operations Group, we have IaaS and PaaS at the IL5, IL6 layer fully deployed. We have IL6 SaaS fully deployed across the Marine Corps. We received the approval for a multi-tenant instance of IL6 SaaS, which we're working on with our partners to deploy in the near future, and allowing commanders to utilize that through hyper-converged cloud infrastructure deployed at the tactical edge. So those are other investments that are manifesting in the Marine Corps in the upcoming FYs. We are going to, so at the global level, enable global data orchestration and engineering integration into our joint and coalition battle networks. Ultimately, the goal is to present our data to the Joint Force in a coherent way where it can integrate and flow to the right people at the right place at the right time for the right reasons. I think I'm quoting Ms. Rathbun yesterday on her comments. That's our goal. So this is perfectly complementary to her information support superiority vision 2.0. And then ultimately, you're here in the Southern California area. Some of the things we're struggling with this service is how to fight from home plate, right? We need some investments within the service in order to enable fighting from home plate. And that's how we see it at the global level. as we move from the global level to the regional level. And this is where, for our commanders, where the rubber meets the road. Excuse me, wrong analogy. So at the regional level, McKee Convergence enables MAGTF Commander assured command and control by posturing the service to federate and enhance joint battle networks that are specific to their region. The Marine Corps enterprise can't be everything to everybody. It needs to have sufficient federation and authorities in order to allow local commanders to integrate those enterprise offerings into regional requirements. So that's something that we're working towards as well through McKee Convergence. The key initiatives associated with McKee Convergence include, as I described earlier, the Marine Corps Tactical Grid. For those that don't know, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force created what was often derided capability as the FMF Tactical Grid. As I said, we're now in the process of collapsing that into the program of record, reducing our cybersecurity and our programmatic risk surface, and pulling that into the enterprise cybersecurity umbrella. In addition to that, we're in the process of defining what global space path diversity looks like for the service. So in the upcoming year, we will provide to our to the operational forces a vehicle by which they can leverage global space path diversity. So they are not dependent upon a single path, but they can maneuver in the electromagnetic spectrum. In order to maneuver in the electromagnetic spectrum, when you're in a weapons engagement zone, you need to be able to understand what is happening in the electromagnetic spectrum and what are your tools to move through that electromagnetic spectrum in a way that's going to be to your best advantage. Which it could also include collapsing your entire electromagnetic spectrum signature in order for your commander to conduct force protection and continue to operate in that. Across the service, software-defined networking capabilities are in the process of being deployed now, which allows for graceful degradation and failover of those capabilities, so a commander can operate autonomously. As we look at the 3 lenses that I described at the regional level, so unity of command and effort, we're right now studying what a regional network operations center and security center looks like, ultimately acknowledging that MAGTF commanders matter in the Marine Corps. So we need to make sure that through network operations and security, they have access to the resources to shorten both the security chain and the commander's relationship, as well as the network operations chain to restore services. Looking at joint and coalition operability. So how do we posture the service to integrate regionally into those appropriate networks? If you're out at Camp Lejeune, you're worried about PinkNet, you're worried about NATO. If you're out at Hawaii or you're in Japan, you're worried about the Indo-PACOM mission network. So making sure that we have the infrastructure available so those respective operational commanders can integrate. And then finally, readiness. So as we consolidate baseline transport capabilities by deploying ubiquitous transport, we collapse the funding that is being expended against duplicative capability. And it'll freeze up funding for commanders to put those funds against other capabilities that commanders should worry about and are unique to their specific environment. So as we look at McKee Convergence, as I move down the stack, so to speak, and we look at it at the regional and the local level. At the local and the edge level. At the local and the edge level, it enables commanders to harness and integrate with joint combined command and control and fires capabilities while conducting maneuver warfare in the EMS. What does that look like through the unity of command and effort lens? It allows them to continue to operate effectively in a disconnected state. That is a reality of our future environment that we have to acknowledge. So how do they operate in a disconnected state? We need to be able to provision that. Again, as I described, software-defined networking provides that capability. We need to engineer it. Seamless failover of capabilities. One of the upcoming Marine Corps programs of record that allows for that at the tactical edge is Operational Command Post. Operational Command Post provides commanders a long-needed modernization of their tactical networks that will allow them to do that at the tactical level. Joint coalition interoperability. So we acknowledge that there are adjacent coalition forces that commanders need to integrate with, need to move and orchestrate data with. Capabilities within our programs of record will come online in the next couple years that will allow them to do that, as well as provide them universal communications capability by enabling 5G or XG, whatever is next on the horizon. And then finally, and this is something that has been long needed, is through the readiness lens. How do we provide MAGTF commanders the right skilled Marines to perform essential missions? Harkening back to the last redesign of our MOS, our occupational field, we discarded what was information assurance at that time. And we said other Marines will perform information assurance functions. I think we've discovered that that's too important of a mission, and right now it's insufficiently resourced. So starting next month, actually in about 4 weeks, the message was released yesterday, we're going to redesign the entire 06 occupational field from the ground up, right? We're going to get away from our traditional silos of network, transport, and services, and we're going to rethink what our occupational field needs to look like in order to not just provide more efficiently the services that are in demand, that we think at the service headquarters that services are in demand, but also project forward as to what services we need to provide to a commander in 2030. EMS, electromagnetic spectrum operations, is one of those. Information assurance, security services is another one that we've under-resourced. How we perform data orchestration is another one, being a little bit more predictive about what commanders are going to ask of their communicators. So we're working on that through the readiness lens. So I'm going to close out and open the floor for questions, but I'm going to describe what we're doing going forward. We have very specific actions. First off, I would say kudos for the Marines in the crowd. We have delivered on a lot of these capabilities in the last 9 months. We are going to have the transport strategy signed by the end of this month, which will deliver ubiquitous agnostic transport. We're launching the OC field modernization effort next month in 4 weeks because of the demand by our OC field, our 0699s, led by Master Gunnery Sergeant Romo. We're also delivering programmatized capabilities that will fold in a very sophisticated cybersecurity umbrella over the entire service, getting rid of the networks that we just look the other way from and actually securing them in a real way and not ignoring problems that are clear in front of us. So the McKee Convergence policy will be signed imminently, and I see Lieutenant Colonel Barnes here. He's guaranteeing me that they're getting that for signature. The transport strategy will be signed. Right now, we're figuring out how to divvy up the battle space and then move from a MCSEN command and control model. So again, procedural or active control on the MCSEN to active control on the entire Marine Corps cyberspace environment, so we can respond at the speed of heat to what we need to for enemy threats. We're going to redesign our OC field. With the redesign of our OC field, we are probably going to have to re-examine what our comm formations look like. And we're probably going to be discreet about which formations we're going to consider in order to get after that in a timely way and in a way that, eat the elephant one bite at a time that we can. And then finally, we expect we're going to go to the Commandant with a decision on all of this. This is a pretty big ask, and it crosses multiple stakeholders and portfolio owners. So it's not lost on me that not all of this is DCI, IC4's responsibility. We cross multiple stakeholders, so we'll have to maybe ask for senior service representative decision on what this plan, how this plan unfolds, if it unfolds. This is a very aggressive plan, all acknowledged. I think there's been a clear understanding within the field and with the service that we can't admire the problem any longer. We need to do something, and this is doing something. We're also capturing momentum that's already been generated over the last year and leveraging that where you have the key stakeholders on the battlefield that are getting after these problems. So with that, I'm going to pause, open the floor for any questions. Thanks for your comments, and thanks for your time. Apologize for the slides. Sir, you said you'd have some questions for me, some zingers.
How you doing, sir?
Good, how you doing?
Great brief. Appreciate that. Could you maybe expand a little bit? Like, so we're talking about the collapsing of Nipper and Sipper. Are we talking in the context of network black core, or are we talking about getting to the point where we actually have true CMW style workstations?
Yeah, so good question. Thanks, Naveed. So acknowledging that a complete collapse is challenging between Nipper and Sipper, and really there are some policy challenges with that. Right now we are working towards collapsing the individual enclaves, because right now if you look at the Marine Corps, I can count on at least two hands the number of network instantiations, enclaves we have of Nipper, which is a big improvement. We used to have, when I was at the McCog, we were doing domain consolidation and elimination. We had 40. So we're on the path to collapsing our entire Nipper, Sipper into one Nipper, one Sipper. The next ask that you're identifying will require more policy changes. And I believe that's where we are with Zero Trust, right? Ultimately, Zero Trust looks at that completely flat network. Now, something that will help to get us to that point is colorless transport. So we're in the process of piloting colorless transport at a very micro level within the Marine Corps. We're planning on investing more in the upcoming FYs to deploy that more fully, and that will solve some of that problem, but not exclusively. Right now, I think we are constrained to Nipper and Sipper enclaves based on higher policy that we can't change.
Thank you.
Yep. Man, that's a sure sign that your brief wasn't very good. Should have had some slides. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no questions, I don't want to force the issue. I was hoping for some questions from some zingers from left field, but it's all okay. I really appreciate your time. One thing, if I could, just ask from industry. So a lot of industry partners here, a lot of opportunity to explore what is the art of the possible. In all domains, the Marine Corps is resource constrained. So affordability is a key point for how we are making decisions about how we deploy modernized capability. We acknowledge that we need to deploy modernized capability. We are right now, we are the victim of lack of investment decisions that were made in the 2010s. So we're trying to clean those up. But throughout the service, there are trade-offs that the Commandant's going to have to make, decisions that he's going to have to make about what we're investing in and what we're not. So if you want to bring something to the Marine Corps that you think will help McKee Convergence, please be ready to talk affordability. That's certainly something, and I know there's probably lots of smiles, like, of course, you want a great deal, Schreier. No, I don't. But I tell you, it's going to be hard for us to make a decision if something is, exorbitant. Okay, thank you.